Welcome to Scaling Your Healthy Food Product podcast, where we believe the process of scaling better for you product doesn't have to be lonely, hard, or complicated, but following simple steps to prepare your product to scale correctly will set you up to succeed. If that is you, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Jacinta Kimboy. Let's get started, everybody. Hi, everybody. So this is another episode, and this episode is expert segment episode. And today we have somebody special. We're gonna get to know her as we continue to hear and continue to have this conversation. We're both in the food space, and it's actually a topic that I had never really heard about it, and I've been in the food industry for like 12 plus years now. And it's food ethnography. Almost feels like in the food industry there's like different silos, but in this case we're going to get to a point where we discuss how all these different fields come together, but specifically food ethnography. So she was in the panel in this year's IFT, and that's actually how I got to know about her. I read an article on the IFT journal, and that's how I reached out, and I just wanted to know more about it because it's very interesting, and this is something that is going to be helpful for the food founders, for you food founders, as you're growing your food brands and the better for you food products. Because the better for you food products, these are the products that we're feeding our current generation and the next generation, and these are the products that are going to build our nation and build the people and bring them up to be in the good health that they need to be able to do what they need to do and the impact that they need to have. So I'm going to let June tell us a little bit about food ethnography and what actually her story. How did she end up coming into food, or even getting to know food ethnography and just taking it on, and the work that she's doing now, because she's talking about hunger in a different way, or now. What does actually hunger mean now? So I will let her tell us a little bit about her story and how she's come to this point at this time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Junjo Lee. I live in San Francisco, and I'm a food ethnographer. So I studied medical anthropology and cultural anthropology, and then I worked at a small consumer research firm in Bellevue, Washington, where we actually applied anthropology and demographics rather than psychographics to consumer research. And so rather than understanding individual psyches, we understood cultural changes and movements in food. And I think at the time, this was around the mid 2000s, early 2000s, was when we really started tracking natural, organic, health and wellness, sustainability, and the premium food space. So all the better for you categories. And yeah, I've just spent many, many years talking with consumers in their homes. And then for the last 10 years, I was the food ethnographer inside Google. So Google has a free food program. They feed all their employees 3 meals plus snacks, and their program is in 57 countries. And so they're serving about 250,000 meals a day, and I help them understand, much like food marketers, understand who they were feeding and what their needs and desires and blockers were for food in the workplace.
Wow. So did you get to interact with the employees as you were working with them, and what were the insights there?
So many insights, but so my day-to-day job was to talk with Googlers and YouTubers. These are not the people creating the content. These are the employees of Google and Alphabet. And I really tried to understand organizational culture at Google and who these eaters were at Google. And I mean, if you can imagine the talent, they were all trying to attract top talent and retain them through the work, of course. But food was a huge part of the culture at Google. And it was the one thing that Googlers could talk to each other and outside of Google to their friends and family freely because they couldn't talk about their work. It was, they couldn't talk about the work, but they could talk about food. And so they expressed their feelings and their hopes and dreams and struggles often through food. So you could tell when the culture was good or when there was some challenges. And also the food program actually became part of the Googlers' identities. It became part of who they were. It reflected the pride of being where they were and working for the company where they worked. And so I think the biggest insight was food wasn't just delicious, fresh, chef uh, cooking. Food was part of the culture at Google that helped them feel care. So many Googlers expressed the fact that they felt deep care from their employers through the food program. So food was care at Google.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard about the food and the free meals because I had some friends that went to work at Google, and that was the first thing. This is now an outsider looking in, now talking to you, and they were just talking about how I'm like, so how is your experience? Oh yeah, the free food. Like that was actually the first thing that they would say. The free food is amazing. I don't have to think about what to carry, what to go cook, or what to figure out how to eat lunch. And that was one of the raves that at least my friend was talking about working in Google was the free was the free food. So it's actually interesting how you're talking about it that way, but it actually makes sense. That was the first thing they would talk about, and that's how I knew that Google was offering free food to their employees.
Yeah, and oftentimes they had a program where you could bring your friends and family and share because they, like I said, they couldn't talk much about their work, but it was one way to show their friends and family where they worked and the kids too. I interviewed a multi-generational Googler family. The dad and then the kids used to come to Google on Bring Your Kids to Work Day, and then they worked at Google.
Oh, and that's exactly what I was gonna ask you. Does that then want them to come to Google? It seems to be exactly what happened. Could there be even a percentage, like a higher percentage, as to the kids that used to come? Was that even a strategy at the time? If that's something, no, it wasn't. Huh?
No, it wasn't a strategy. It was just natural. I think it's natural because we're humans. We eat and we have our food and our culture is so tied into how we have relationships and interact with each other. And because it was free, it was not transactional at all. And so they were able to take the transaction out of the relationship. And it was pretty incredible place when I worked there.
Interesting. So then would you say, because now this is like tying, would you then say to even the companies in terms of company culture, because you've studied that and now weaving it in with food, like somebody can, like as a food founder, they're still growing their business. These are emerging brands that are still growing their businesses. Would you then advise them like this is something, because people always talk about, oh, the founders would say, how do we keep in our community? How do I interact with my employees? How do I get them to be engaged and to just value this business the way I value this business? Would you then say that in like including food in their culture, or just sharing a meal, or taking, because companies, or at least the companies that I've worked with, we would have maybe once a month, or yes, once a month, or and then once a year, where we would go and eat together, and this is like celebrating, this is Christmas, we're celebrating as a company. Would you then, like, how would you put that, you having studied the culture and how Google brought food together. And now you're even talking about like multi-generations now. People want to work there and they love being there. Um, what are your takes on that?
Yeah. So I'll just start from the beginning. And there's a lot of articles and opinions about why Google has food there and why they created the free food program. And, all the ideas about when you eat together, you become a family together. People talk about the unintentional collisions that happen through the snacks and the micro kitchens and through food, and that Gmail was created that way. I mean, there's a lot of talk about it, but when I was talking to the early days, the administrative partners who their job was to take care of the leader of the team and the teams, they said in the early days, if you imagine the software engineers, many of them are introverts, and they had just come straight off of college campuses, university campuses, where they had shared food, uh, cafeteria food there, on campus. And then they were so passionate about their work that they would often forget to eat. And also they were introverts. And so food was just like one way to bring everyone out of their intense work and to take care of them. Because, they realize when you're hunched over coding for hours and hours, it's not good for your health, right? And so really, it started from care. So I think the foundation was care. And although there are a lot of maybe even business reasons why it worked for them at the time, I think if founders want to, and founders are in food, right? This is a founder.
Yes, exactly.
Food is the ultimate unit of care. So food is the first lesson we learn in life. It is the way we feel the care of our mothers and parents, right? When we're fed. Um, and so it is very primordial and essential, primal, that when someone feeds us,
Right.
we have trust. We build trust and we build a relationship through food. And so I would say if you want a company or a culture that is built on care and trust and a sense of belonging, because right now so many of us, some of the hungers that I'm exploring these days is loneliness, anxiety. We're so disconnected. And I love the name of your program about scaling food. But part of what I've been really exploring is as we scale goods like food and technology and stuff,
Right.
what we haven't figured out how to scale is care and connection. And so, yes, I would say it would not just help the morale but it would also maybe if you design it into your business, maybe you can design it then into the products that you are offering to the world. And maybe you can really, maybe you can start designing in care and connection in your products.
Products. Yeah, that's actually you just reminded me, and I think I did mention to you before when we interacted. I was wondering about that, like some of the companies that I've worked with and I've had like teams, and I remember this specific story of one of the team member that left. They left to go to a different organization, but later on we still kept in touch and we were discussing and she bluntly said, you know what, I kind of miss our team. Like I miss the culture that we had, and I was trying to figure out like why. So then I'm asking, well, how is it different from like where we were like when we were working together? How is that organization different from this one? And she just went about like and it just came out like I didn't. And now talking to you is when I'm realizing, okay, yeah, I think he did have a part with food, because she's like, yeah, people just do their own thing, eat their own way. Like nobody interacts with everybody, and it's like, okay, do your own thing, I'll do my own thing, and she was. But then the organization that we were in together, we would like it just happened that way. Like we didn't really plan it, but it would happen that like during lunchtime we would, as a team, we would take breaks together and we go eat, and as we're eating, most I would say 80% of the time we would be talking about work, but it didn't feel like we were talking about work. So I was reflecting back to that one, and I'm like, I think maybe that's the culture that she's missing. For her to not be happy where she is, it's because she's already seen, like she already saw what it could be, and now she's in a different environment that is missing. Um, so it's actually very interesting you say you put it that way. So would you then say, like, based on like your experience and the research, like in such cases now, like my coworker before, would you then say it doesn't really matter, like it is the community, and there's a lot of like community culture and organization culture where people would stay for the community even more than maybe they pay, or maybe they don't like what they're getting out of the benefits, but just because of that community they would stay?
Uh, well, I mean, if you think about it, the community that I had studied for 10 years called Google was a tribe. And I mean, a lot of, uh, they had a lot of perks, a lot of benefits.
Right.
It was a heyday of that early tech. And, um, and yet, when I interviewed them, uh, the thing that they would miss the most, and of course, it was always about the challenge of the work and the love of the work itself. But second, it was each other, the network. They were really, really, um, you know, um, uh, wanting to stay in the tribe, in the community, in the network of other Googlers who were doing really interesting, challenging, impactful work.
Right.
And so I might say food was a way of connecting, just like in a family.
Yes.
If you have breakfast, at least breakfast and dinner together, or, weekend meals, that becomes a time and place for deeper connections.
Right.
And one example in my personal life is, my kids they're both Gen Zers living in New York. So my husband and I are empty nesters. When they would come home, because we always had meals together and someone was cooking, they just slotted into it. And so during COVID, when they were in college and, in the rooms, then
Right.
it was the food that would bring them out. And we would connect while we were eating or cooking. And now with my husband, I just started eating lunch with him. We didn't used to eat lunch together, but we just started to casually, and we prepare it, figure out our schedule a little bit, sync it up. And then we just go outside and sit on our deck. I live in San Francisco. It's quite beautiful right now, and it feels like we've gotten closer just because. I mean, we always ate dinner together,
Right.
because we're in the height of the day, still energetic, and yeah, our and more importantly, I think we're finding a food life rhythm together. Our rhythms are syncing, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it does make.
Yeah. So we have a shared rhythm in our overall everyday life. And I think we're getting closer again.
Nice, especially being in the empty nester stage, right? Like that's actually very good because that also I'll take mine seriously too because I would like eat lunch with my husband too, but of late, like with the summer and everything, that kind of like fell off. But then now I realize, okay, there was that, like everything was a rhythm at the time, but now it's like more we have to work at it a bit to be able to be like, "Okay, what are you working on?" But now I realize we were eating together, but at the same time we were just talking and getting in sync. Just by you, just by you mentioning that, I'm like, wow, it's actually very, it's very interesting that food brings people like it's every. Oh, now I'm thinking everything revolves around food.
Well, in some ways, yes. And here's an example. I was doing I did a, a small segmentation study for a client who was in the really good for you.
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up because I was gonna.
Then, yeah, for the IFT conference in Chicago, I led a keynote panel on GLP-1s and where does desire go. And so I did a little mini ethnog on users of GLP-1s who were not taking it for diabetes, but for other, conditions, mostly overweight. And I think it showed up as anxiety and depression oftentimes. And so I was noticing these two groups, and it almost felt like the segment of research I was doing for this client in the good for you food space. They were the control group because when I was analyzing how they ate, they all had a rhythm. They all had like a pattern in their everyday lives, and it was never just alone. So they made sure to create a sync up. Maybe it was just dinner or the weekends, but still with their partner or with their young families.
Right.
And so food became a way to set the beat of the day, but also a way to reset the beat of the day if it got off beat.
During
And
the day, yes.
during the day, during over the course of a week or a month or a season or a year. It was just a way to create syncopation and to sync versus the GLP-1 user group. They had no real food rhythm to their eating was tended to be quite chaotic, and they all had they were dysrhythmic, in some ways. And so that's when I started thinking about this rhythm. And we spend so much of our day outside of work. I mean, outside of home. We spend it at work. And
Yeah.
yet we don't have, for many of us, we don't have that opportunity to have the workplace food be part of our overall food life rhythm. And so I'm thinking about this quite a bit right now.
No, that is actually that is very telling. Just the fact that the control had it, you could just figure it out. Like the control had a rhythm where the other group, the treatment group, did not have a rhythm.
Yeah, it was pretty chaotic, right? They would all talk about the cravings and the food noise, but it was it was like listening to my kids were in band and when elementary school band versus
Everything is all over. Yeah, everything is
yeah,
all over the place.
very yes, it was. But I think that's another consideration is what is our food life rhythm? And, founders, especially in your space of better for you food,
Right.
how can they help create rhythm? How can they help support or be a part of a healthy everyday rhythm in people's lives? I think would be really important.
Right. Wow. That is. that is something to noodle over and to like think about. And you've given them a question to, even myself, I'm just thinking about it, and it's a question to just think about some more and see how the impact as, and we're in the food space. So how can we have more impact by creating that rhythm in people's lives?
The better for you isn't just about the s- the food, the stuff, the thing, what we put in our mouths.
Right,
It's
right,
about how it lives in our life. It's about how it lives in our kitchens, in our spaces where we need nourishment or pleasure, or support, functional, right? Support.
right,
How can you become a part of and help in the culture of the people, in the life of the people? So beyond just nutrition and calories and macros, how does it become? And then you really start establishing a relationship.
right, right,
Yeah.
right,
And we can help create interconnection and care and relational dynamics. It becomes something special.
right. So can you give us an example of like what a food brand can do to help their brand have that impact? Or create the rhythm, and just looking beyond the food itself that you're producing and you're sending it out to the world. What's an example of what a food founder can do? We could even take one, maybe a snack, a healthier snack, that they're developing and they're sending it out to the world. Like, what are some of the things they can do to create that rhythm in people's lives, or in their consumers in this case?
Yeah, so part of what I do is very specific. So it's the opposite of, abstract and
Right,
theoretical.
right, right.
Has to be incredibly specific. So I might challenge a founder and say, you and all of your team, you all should be our food ethnographers. So bring it into your daily lives, have a relationship with it in your life, talk about it. So beyond just the meeting room and thinking about it as a thing, bring it to life in your own food life. And, be an ethnographer, be a food ethnographer, and see where it feels alive and where it doesn't. Um, I'll give you an example of where I experienced a food delivery service.
Mm.
And the marketing was great. The people behind it were great, and then I tried the product. I trialed it, and my husband and I mean, it was tasty, and the first two meals that we trialed, he did it in the oven, and I was taking a shower and after yoga, and I could smell the cooking.
It
I could
smells
smell. It
like
smelled like someone had been cooking in the kitchen. And I would say, wow, that is an example of like I was feeling the care, right? Of
right.
stepping into a tasty meal. And then we started eating it, and visually it tasted better than it looked. It still was in a tray and looked like it was airplane food. But more importantly, as we were eating it, there was no uh, break. There was no the food itself didn't lend to uh, incorporating time into the eating, meaning that we ate it so fast,
You were
we
not
were still hungry and unsatisfied, and it was gone. And so then we would make something else. And so in that sense, I was feeling, wow, they need to add stops into the eating. They need to slow down the eating. It's not just about making it as easy and instant as possible.
right.
So that was an example of where they did bring the food to life, and an example of maybe where they could think about how could they create a natural rhythm to the eating. Because I think uh, one of their target consumer base are people on GLP-1s and medical meals. And so if they're really in the food as medicine space,
Right. Right.
it's
Because
not
that
just
right. Because it will now I'm getting like a light bulb. It's going to yeah, it's for the people that are using the medical, they're using it, but if it's not giving them breaks to enjoy this meal, they're still going to be hungry in the end, and it's not going to have the impact that it's supposed to have.
yeah, if you're eating it so fast
So
because it's
fast, yeah.
too easy, the meal was instant in every way, then right, it just contributes to eating overeating. You don't really remember the meal. It's not memorable.
Right.
For
And if
example,
it's not memorable, you're not going to buy it again because it didn't leave that memory. Wow.
well, or it's somewhat just there's not the satisfaction, and I don't know. We ended up
You
eating
ended
too
too
much.
quickly. Yeah, you,
Yeah,
you ended up going to back to the kitchen that you're not supposed to go back to if you
yeah,
have this in front of
exactly.
you. Wow. But the fact that you said that your work spans into like there are different ways, and I read your article, and one of the story that really grabbed me was when you're talking about the salad company that you worked with, and one of them would say rinse it before you eat it, and the other one was you don't need to rinse it, and the better one was actually the rinse it, but people ended up going with the one that did not need any rinsing. And I'm sure I'm missing some gaps in there. Can you fill us in about that?
Yeah, that's a great example of the rhythm. I like this. I haven't quite thought about rhythm in this way, but so one was a aquaponic product. It was in a controlled environment. It had never been exposed to any kinds of pesticides or insecticides, fungicides. And for some reason, in the early days, the packaging designer just suggested that they put as part of their labeling, please wash before eating, enjoying.
Yes.
And then the other was an organic, like big organic salad company where they were required to wash it because of the organic inputs. And so it was mandated, and they said, and so they turned that messaging into triple washed. And so the consumer, not knowing all the reasons behind it when they saw it, in the stores, one felt like, oh, I need to wash it because it's not, clean. And the other felt squeaky clean. Uh, but more importantly, they could skip the entire step of for the please wash before enjoy.
And I
You
like
have
that.
yeah,
I
don't
yeah.
have to wash it, take a salad, spin her out, dry it, and it saved them a good, 7-10 minutes. So yeah, those are the little noticings of where it helps and where you want to speed things up and make it easier and where you have unintended consequences. I'm sure they never thought that those little words would be more important than other things they were thinking about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because you're thinking it doesn't have any pesticide. Hello, this is what you don't want in your food, but the washing part is what how was a deal breaker? It was a that's what wow, it's very interesting, and what you're doing is like I said, it's such a revealing. Just reading your article like made me realize there's more to food ethnography than I had realized. The culture, and now you're talking about the rhythm. Um, it's one of the things that I think more food founders need to think about, need to incorporate for us to have the impact that we desire. Because the example that you just gave of the food that you are getting, and there was no breaks. It's supposed to go, it's intended for good. It's intended to help people to lose weight and to stay healthy. Uh, but because it's so quick, it's so fast, like you have to think as a product developer, you have to think about everything. Like you have to think about those breaks. Yeah, you have to think about everything, not just it's a good product, let's take it out, let people eat it. Like this is a good this is a good reminder, June, that you're giving us to think about every single step and every stage of our foods that we're putting out there, to give it a little bit more thought as the food founders, as the Better For You food founders. And to really, I'm now thinking, I think this is probably, it might be the missing piece to the Better For You food products making having a better impact, if we think through those channels. Because it's one thing to develop it and to market it, but it's another way to think about where is it going to and how is it going to end up into the person's plate, and what are the experiences it's going to bring, and what are they going to remember in the end. And yeah.
So I guess if you think about what you're creating as alive in culture, as alive in our worlds,
Right.
as it's a very different relationship than if you think about it as units or things
Right.
that, you know.
And we tend to talk about how we say SKUs and units and, yeah.
Yeah, but know that food is alive, right?
Right.
And it's a living interaction with us. It's like every day we have to take the world inside us to have energy. It's an energetic exchange in some ways at the most essential. And so if you start thinking about it that way, it changes how you design it and market it.
Wow. Thank you. I think that's a good point to end at, and that is a good place for us as food founders to remember that we're not just putting out anything out there, we're putting out a food actually, or putting out food that is going to help the person on the other side. And June has reminded us some of the missing pieces that we need to think about, all the way from the culture of the organization to the product itself and how it's going to be perceived on the other side as you produce it. But June, I know you're working on a book, and I want to give you a chance to tell our listeners, or the founders here, or anybody that is listening, where can they find your work to interact with it some more? And tell us about the book. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so I'm writing a book about the 20 years of learning from a great industry and also learning from the consumers of the industry, and really writing about the ways in which we're eating and how might we how do we want connecting it to systems. Food is at the center of systems thinking and design. And so it ties in with climate, it ties in with um everything, right?
Hey.
Care, equity, social determinants of health, culture, all of it fun. And so it's going to tell the story of how we're eating and where we're going and where do we want it to go, because we all have the power
Right.
to decide how we want the world to taste. And what you're offering as your service is, how do we make more of that? How do we scale
Yes, exactly.
the world to taste? So, but these days, where you can find me is wonderland.kitchen. It's um it's it's how I'm starting to bring food into the communal space and to share with other people my approach my food ethnography approach. So it remixes food ethnography with systems design into pop-ups. And the pop-ups could look like a fermentation workshop where we're actually making water kimchi or crouchy, or it could be a cacao tasting that goes deep into systems and systems thinking, or it could be a custom design into some speculative, ways we might explore hot mess topics like generative AI or, sustainability by actually imagining what a restaurant in Mars would taste like. So it's a living food art platform where I work with both educators, so libraries, school systems, food education organizations like WIC, and ag in the classroom teachers and school garden teachers on one hand, and then businesses. So people like the founders you work with, to have team builds or design sprints to really help them feel, feel and taste deeper connections and care through the food, through the work in their lives, and in some small way share how to become a food ethnographer, like have a different lens to food and to business. So you can find me there, public libraries, schools, and businesses sharing my work.
And yeah, we're looking forward to sharing your book and having you back when you finish the book and launch it. But we'll also, I think we could do something to help the Better for You food founders. So we'll look at something to work together. I just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for coming to the
Mhm.
podcast. And we're glad that you're able to share this time with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was fun talking.
Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss all the new tips that are coming. Go to kamaresearch.com/resources to download the reasons down white panel some so get with money,